Hello, everyone. Welcome to the DePIN podcast. I'm your host, Tom Trowbridge. Thrilled to have Mike Horton here, the founder of GEODNET, doing some very exciting things with regard to location. Thrilled to have Mike here. Mike, welcome. First, give us your quick summary of what you think defines, what do you think DePIN means? What is the DePIN sector to you?
DePIN to me is a new way to build physical infrastructure. I think the word physical is very important. Infrastructure is very important. Networks very important. And then decentralized. So hitting on all the key points. Infrastructure is a big unlock for the economy. It does amazing things. We can think about an airplane network, train network. These things create massive opportunity, but they come with enormous cost and energy to get them built. And that's only become harder over the years. The decentralization and using blockchain to build out infrastructure quickly and efficiently is just it's a massive opportunity. And that's what DePIN means to me. It's a way to create new infrastructure, create new distributed solutions that solve real world problems using tokenomics and using kind of the crowd, but in a professional way to get high quality infrastructure built. And then people can build on top of that super efficiently. So it's big opportunity.
So I think you hit all the points. My kind of standard definition is crowdsourced physical infrastructure that's joined in a network that's secure and incented by crypto economics. And I think you hit all those points.
Absolutely. And I think the secure and incented piece is the big innovation over crowdsourcing that allows it to compete effectively against traditional infrastructure solutions and compete very successfully in the sense that now you have the benefits of that crowdsourced in terms of the speed, scale, and cost advantages that it provides without sacrificing the quality and security that traditional infrastructure has. And in fact, improving, and in our case, I think really improving on the quality and the security of traditional infrastructure. So you win on every metric. That's what's so compelling about it, and why in GeoDNet's case, we see such quick adoption of our service from the Web 2 and commercial community, because they can see it too. They can see the speed, they can see the quality, they can see the cost, all those advantages. And when you win on all those metrics, it's very, very, very unusual in business to win on all those metrics. Usually you pick two. They always say, okay, you can be the best and the best service and the best availability, or you can be the best cost and the best availability, but you can't have all three at once. But I think DePIN actually unlocks the ability to win on all three metrics against traditional centralized solutions. So super compelling.
Well, let's dig into, I think different DePIN projects hit all those. Some do, some don't, but it sounds like you guys do. So why don't you give the summary of what GeoDNet is up to and kind of the areas in which you're super compelling.
Yeah, so GeoDNet is really revolutionizing the location services market by providing a high accuracy, high fidelity location service that's secure at a very affordable cost. And that's done by building out terrestrial infrastructure to augment classical GPS. This terrestrial infrastructure is basically what we call a satellite mining station. Satellite mining station goes up on the rooftop. It observes the same satellite signals that your phone or your car does, but then it's able to process that data to allow your phone, car, drone correct for errors and achieve very high fidelity and also a higher level of resiliency against signal interference, resiliency against solar storms, these types of things. So it hardens and makes more accurate the day-to-day devices that you use for navigation, for positioning, for asset tracking, for robotics, these types of applications.
Super interesting. On that, there's so many different parts to dig into. But first, your core device, is that a custom-built hardware that you guys built? Is it off the shelf? Tell us about the hardware component of that.
Yeah, so we did work with a partner to develop a custom-built device that would hit all the kind of key metrics that are needed. The traditional devices that do what GeoDNet does, that mine the salaries, are just way too expensive. There's been a lot of innovation in the silicon for GPS and GNSS signal tracking. We leveraged those innovations in the silicon ecosystem and the chip ecosystem in order to produce a device that can track all the satellite signals that are in the sky and do that at a very affordable price point. So there is a piece of custom hardware that you purchase and it costs $700. You set it up and you start to be able to mine the GOD. If you put it into a empty hex or a hex that hasn't already had NFT secured in it, then you can basically secure a location that can earn at the maximum rate on the GEOD network if you set up the station right.
And I definitely want to dig into token economics, but before we go there, talk about let's talk about your background first and how you got into this and kind of how you're sort of optimized for this kind of company and role.
So I spent my whole life working on navigation, positioning, sensor fusion between GPS and inertial measurement units and cameras and things primarily for autonomy and robotic type applications. And one of the problems that's really prevented GPS positioning to play as big a role as it can in autonomy is that the accuracy has been not there. So how do you get the accuracy? Well, you need this terrestrial infrastructure to correct for these errors. And so myself and another one of the co-founders, Dr. E, we looked at trying to build this out with the traditional Web 2 way, recognizing that the cost of hardware is coming down, the need for precision location is going up, big opportunity to build a network. Looked at doing it the traditional way, talked to folks like American Tower, even did a little bit of business with Public Storage to try to set up locations here in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, and found it is phenomenally expensive and slow. And that's when we met our third co-founder, David Chen, who's a real OG in the blockchain space, worked on the first terahash Bitcoin ASIC, built out a public chain in China, been in the Ethereum ecosystem, now really up on Solana. He kind of joined our team, and we set to build out a Web3 solution, following really getting inspiration to give credit, where it's due, inspiration from what Helium had done. We saw how they were scaling up the IoT network. We thought our problem was a little bit more tractable. You don't need as many nodes, and has a better standardization of what people do with this type of data. So we saw, hey, look, we can do the same thing. We can build an IoT class device that people can set up, and we can solve this problem once and for all. Published a white paper on it, got best paper from the Institute of Navigation, which is a very traditional academic and government-driven publication on scientific research on satellite navigation, and the industry has been excited about what GeoDNet's doing ever since.
Terrific. Well, I mean, it sounds like, and this is not necessarily unique to your project, there's a couple others like this, but where your background is, a decade plus in being perfect for this type of role. And then you've had that with the confluence of blockchain technology evolving to be appropriate and the hardware availability and cost going down. Yep. So you've had at least three factors, and maybe the customer side is the fourth factor. And the none of this is not possible.
Hardware cost. It's because the cost of the hardware is coming down that the ability to incorporate this type of service into consumer products is there. And then that creates the need for having the network data. So a lot of it is timing driven, where you have a confluence of factors. But blockchain has been a huge unlock to actually get this to work. I think if you try to do GeoDNet with Web 2 technologies, it will not work. It's not only the cost, it's not only the timing, but it's also payments. It's also validation of data. It's a whole host of factors. It's trust in the data. It's the ability to, create a real protocol around it. You just cannot do it effectively without blockchain infrastructure in place. And so we build upon, these low cost Ethereum L2s like Polygon, where we started, the high speed, high throughput of Solana. These are core enabling technologies to building out a network like GeoDNet. And without that infrastructure in place, we couldn't build the infrastructure that we're building. Without the infrastructure that we're building, you couldn't have a consumer robot at your house mow your lawn, right? So it's stacking these things together that's, I think, going to really accelerate adoption of some of the technologies that people have dreamed about for years, like consumer scale robotics. This is really the way to get it done. And without these technologies, you wouldn't be able to deliver those services to customers at the price points that can be adopted at scale.
Well, yeah, listen, I think it's fascinating. Helium is the same concept. I think their their original radio, I think Kyle Samani said this one in Brussels, was something like their Wi-Fi router was, something like $5,000. And then a particular chip came off patent and was, genericized, and that dropped it down to the $500 range, which all of a sudden made it possible. So like it's a combination of all these things, and that obviously opens up things. Well, you mentioned that your receiver, your antenna costs about $700, and you mentioned mining. So can you talk a little bit about how that works, how the hexes, you've got thousands deployed, how much the world, lots of things to get into.
Yeah, so we've divided the world into hexes, and the goal is to get one high quality GeoDNet station running perfectly reliably in each hex.
And how big is a hex?
The hex is an 8-kilometer edge length. I believe it is a H5, I think. It's a H5, yeah. So we have the world divided into H5 hexes, and each H5 hex has the potential for 2 times the base rewards rate. So the first miner that gets into that hex and earns an NFT for having a stable, high-performant miner in there then earns this NFT, which locks him to be able to have the full rewards rate to himself. Then subsequent miners that are in that hex that come in share the second bucket of 1x rewards. So this is a key point, that we're using the physical surface of the Earth and the fact that we have a secure location infrastructure and can know where these stations are in a secure way to create scarcity. So we won't have, overcrowding, which I think is something, an oversupply. We'll have the appropriate supply to create the geometry of the network that we want to deliver the coverage and quality.
And how many hexes does that mean? How many?
So if you have them all over if you count up all the hexes over the land mass of the world, there are 100,000. Now, the ones that really matter is probably about 20,000, and we have 8,000 plus covered today. So we are almost well on our way. We are the biggest network of our kind in the world. There is no Web 2 network that has more stations than GeoDNet. We're almost, I think by the end of the year, we'll be twice as big as the nearest competitor. So we passed in about, I think, April or so, we passed the largest Web 2 network ever built. And it's still scaling very, very well. Certainly, we want to get to 20,000 nodes in the next year or two. That would be ideal to have perfect coverage of the places where you can monetize. And then long term, there's scientific benefit to the data. And of course, these applications will continue to grow. So eventually, we'd like to fill every hex on the continental land mass of the Earth, which would take us to about 100,000.
And in terms of mining, is that a set reward that declines over time? Mm-hmm. Is it X% that has some halving schedule?
Yeah, we have an annual halving. So the maximum rewards rate right now is 24 tokens per day, or about 8,000 tokens per year. And to achieve that, you do need to have the installation be very high quality, and your online time needs to be perfect. So if you do put it in on a balcony or someplace where you don't have clear sky view, or you have spotty internet, it goes down very quickly. What we really try to incentivize is people to get to the maximum rewards rate. We want that. That's well aligned with our goals to deliver high quality data, is to get the nodes in the right places and have those nodes be performant. And that creates a win-win. And that's why we have the NFT locking mechanism as well, is to try to create a win-win between somebody who does get out there and get it. They don't have to worry about in the future crowding and sharing rewards with other people. They create high quality infrastructure in a place that the network needs it, and then they get rewarded. We have a further mechanism on top of that to incentivize creation of network in areas that are harder to get to through a staking mechanism, where a super hex, so this is now a H4 hex, so it's basically 7 H5 hexes that form a larger hex. That region can get staked, which then will unlock double or quadruple rewards in that region. And that's to promote stations to appear in a decentralized way in regions where we don't have coverage, and try to create a more perfect, evenly distributed network over the Earth.
And that leads to an interesting question because we got to talk about customers and who wants the data. But are you potentially, I would imagine the customer demand is going to be focused in high GDP areas, but yet you may be incenting low GDP areas for global coverage. So are you giving more rewards to areas that are not as economically, attractive for your customer base potentially?
Right, right. Well, you think about an automotive customer; they have cars everywhere. You think about somebody selling a consumer product; there are consumers everywhere. So the value of a network does go up quite a lot when you have scale and you have even coverage. With GeoDNet, one thing to point out that's very different than DY is that one node per hex is enough, no matter how many users. So I can put one node in the right location in downtown Manhattan, and every single man, woman, and child in Manhattan can use the GeoDNet service without an additional node being there. So that's a very unique scaling that reflects the fact that we're really a sensor network. We're really a satellite observation network as opposed to, say, data delivery like in DY. So DY will need to scale up, put more nodes in that downtown Manhattan location, whereas our one node will provide the same service. At the same time, customers love coverage. I mean, this is a huge unlock in terms of consistency of operation of devices and performance. So, I mean, think about, some of our biggest customers, Deep Sand, Hemisphere, others that are in the ag market, have tractors and machines running all over the world. So for them, coverage is huge. And that's an important factor. I mean, people are working and doing things all over the world. And I go back to the old Verizon ad campaign. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? I mean, coverage is a really key thing for creating network value. And I think frankly, if you talk to people who subscribe to that network, the reason they normally give you why they pay, it works everywhere. The coverage is good. So networks, for us, that's a huge factor in our success in our marketing with the Web 2 customers is showing the coverage.
And so talk to us about the customers. You mentioned a couple, but talk about the sort of the proposition, because you sort of implied that it's a more precise location earlier, but tell us about the customers and the variety of use cases. I'm sure the average person isn't as familiar with location services kind of market.
Sure. So think about, let's take a recent announcement we made in farming with another. We have like 4 or 5 major customers now in the farming market. So AliNav, they build tractor control systems that will auto steer tractors for spraying and planting. You think about the rows of crops, right? They're spaced at a very even grid. If you have a GPS location that is a couple meters in X and Y, you can't automate that. You can't have the machine drive itself around if it's going to be going left and going right by 1 to 2 meters or 3 to 6 feet. You're going to run over your crops, and that would be devastating. Whereas with RTK, you're centimeter accurate. So what does that let them do? That lets them run that machine automatically. The farmer.
You said seven. What accurate? 7
to 8 feet. I mean, if you think about
7 to 8 feet accurate. Okay,
that would be what you get with normal GPS.
And
not
you guys
nearly
are
good enough to automate agriculture where you have row spacing like this, right? I mean, the rows can be very close together. We're sub-inch. We're inch accurate.
Fine. That's what I heard.
So it's a factor of about 100 more precise. Now I can very precisely control that machine and have it run up and down the rows in an automated way. I can minimize the overlap when I'm spraying chemicals, so I can directly save on input costs. I can basically create sort of virtual rows and virtual roads in the field. So I'm not compacting the soil in different places. Wherever the tractor drives, the soil is not good for growing because it basically compacts the soil. If I have drip irrigation, I can avoid tearing up my drip irrigation system by driving in the wrong places. So all these tools, they've been there for a long time. This is precision ag, and we have a really cool post that's going to come out later this week with the USDA. So USDA is running a GeoDNet node and is promoting the adoption of this type of technology to small farms. Large farms have been doing it for a long time. So it's a mature business, and we provide a massive cost savings in that marketplace. And that's why the small farm story, we're going to help small farmers adopt these precision ag practices. But about 30% of all farm operations in the United States today do use precision ag practices that rely on RTK solutions. And so that's a big market in and of itself, that 30%. And with the effort of the USDA and the lower cost of our hardware, we'll be able to go after the remaining 70% of farmers that are smaller, that don't necessarily have the money up front to pay for the services and equipment that has previously been so expensive.
And so how much cheaper is the product? How big is that market? I still have no sense as to how big.
Yeah, so our retail price for the professional service is recommended at $400 a year, and that's about 5 to 10 times cheaper than the professional services from the Web 2 companies. Now that price goes down. That's retail for professional use. When you start talking about IoT devices such as robotic mowers or ADAS systems in automobiles, consumer car stuff, the price goes way, way down, much, much lower in those high volume applications. And it becomes something that's, really measured in dollars per year, $10 per year type of thing, $20 per year, just depend on the volume and the cost. And that's orders of magnitude different than what's available from traditional networks. And
so that, you mentioned the precision is, 10, 20 times more precise, and the price is 10 to 20 times cheaper. So your value is obviously 100 plus more, higher value proposition. But help me understand how big that market is and other markets that are relevant for this. Because the only downside with low, super cheap pricing is that the market that was $1 billion is now 100 million to you guys, or less.
So the existing marketplace for high precision GPS services is anywhere between, depending on which market study you believe, 2 to 3 billion a year to about 20 billion a year. There is a publicly available market research report that I recommend to everybody because it's very comprehensive, that's published by the European Space Agency. It's free to download. It has a market at about 20 billion. It has it growing very nicely. So I think it's big. There's also tons of equipment that's out there. So a lot of equipment in construction and survey and farming and drones has been fielded over the last decade that can immediately take advantage of the cost and accuracy of the GeoDNet service. So we definitely go after that market. Yes, you do make the dollar smaller by shrinking the price point. But that also enables new adoption and it enables new markets. So we have some very exciting things, even in things like, mobile gaming that we'll be announcing soon, where if you want to enable augmented reality type of experiences, you need high precision location on your phone for augmented reality to work. And so those things, there's no way, you can't possibly do those things today with the economics and delivery mechanisms that are in place. And that's something that GeoDNet can enable. So those types of things can exponentiate the market because now you're bringing in a new type of technology, precise location, to a consumer marketplace. And I think that's what fires us up the most. We definitely want to see our service used and gain traction in the traditional applications because I think those applications are feeding us. They're building us our infrastructure, our roads. They're all things we want to see happen at scale. We want to see these types of technologies get adopted more in the developing world where they can help improve infrastructure. It's super exciting, but the most exciting of all is the consumer market. This is the biggest market. It does value tech, right? What you hold in the palm of your hand now with your phone in terms of it's got lidars and cameras. So we're just bringing another capability to that mobile phone that can enable you to combine things with say the camera or the lidar to now make real augmented reality a possibility on your phone. That I find incredibly exciting.
Listen, whenever you make a product far, far cheaper, the market expands. We all know that and can see it happen. Tell us about revenue, burning of tokens, how that cycles into your ecosystem, because it seems super simple and super compelling.
Yeah. So when you use the GeoDNet service, you pay for it in fiat, but you're buying tokens back with that. So effectively, you can think of it as whenever anyone uses GeoDNet service, they are buying GeoDNet tokens. We don't force Web 2 customers to directly buy the tokens. We have software and we have infrastructure that helps them do that kind of behind the scenes. So they're paying in fiat, but what's going on is the buyback of GOD tokens. So every dollar spent directly buys back GOD tokens from the open market. We were integrating with the Uniswap API We rely, again, on previous generations of blockchain technology that have been developed to make all of this possible. And DeFi is another amazing piece of technology that is critical to the operation and scalability of GEODNET. So those tokens get bought back, then 80% of them get sent to the burn address. So protocol usage, the GeoDNet Foundation our goal is not to build an empire. We're not trying to build a Web 2 corporation with tall buildings and stuff. We're trying to build a protocol that can scale. Think of something like the DNS protocol, something like that that everybody can use and take advantage of. So the vast, vast majority of protocol fees just simply get sent to the burn address. Tokens acquired, 80% of the tokens acquired for the GeoDNet service gets sent to the burn address, 20% gets sent back to the foundation. That's the mechanism that the protocol is developing.
Listen, love that. What I think some people mistake is they say the foundation can burn some, but when you have a clear rule, that is a much, much simpler communication. People can understand it, and it is adds, I think, a terrific amount more value. So super simple. People buy towers, they receive rewards, which are, have every year. You get more rewards if you're the first in a hex. And then the protocol or the foundation or the company, I'm not sure which, sells to customers.
The customers buy back tokens when they're paying in fiat. So we built a piece of software, like if you pay for the service with PayPal, when you pay it with PayPal, automatically through the Uniswap API, that money that was paid gets converted to GOD tokens. 80% of those get sent to burn, 20% back to the foundation. We're working on rolling that out. As we started out, given all the newness of all the stuff, the foundation has had to help customers buy back and burn tokens to start off with. But we're pushing that back into the network as quickly as we can so that it's fully 100% decentralized. And that, I think, will... it helps with transparency, obviously, but it also helps with the being a true permissionless, censorship-resistant network. Getting everything fully decentralized is the key elements to that, and that's where we want to be long term.
Listen, it makes sense, and if you're talking about a multi-billion-dollar market, you'd be talking about millions, tens of millions of dollars of revenue. That is a lot of tokens to be burned, given kind of the market cap of where it is right now. So I find that's interesting, and it hasn't hit yet.
It hasn't hit yet. That's right.
I get it, but it just takes a couple big customers and a couple things to actually happen, and then the penny's going to drop.
Yeah, I think we're in a fantastic spot. That's all I can say. I am very excited about the adoption of our network, and the fact that DePIN hasn't hit is an opportunity. Everybody should know that this is coming, and it definitely it's going to work.
Listen, I get it, love it. Tell us, how do people follow? How do people follow you? How do they follow GeoDNet? How do they participate? How do they buy and check? If they can get an antenna, help people out.
So we put a lot of effort into our YouTube channel. So I recommend everyone follow our GeoDNet YouTube channel. We publish quite a few videos on how to get involved with the community, how to use it. That's a great way. We obviously have our X account. There's geodnet.com, has all the information. There's docs.geodnet.com, which is kind of a formal, walkthrough of all the different elements of the network, both on the tokenomics as well as on how to set up a miner, where to get a miner, all that type of stuff.
Terrific. And how do people find you?
You can find me on an X at Mike A. Horton. You can just follow GeoDNet. We're a pretty tight knit group, so we're keeping track of all the social media interest. I'm on Discord some, X a fair bit. I'm trying to go to all the crypto conferences now. I think one of the constant sort of feedback that GeoDNet gets is we're not crypto native enough, and we're too focused on our Web 2 stuff. And that probably comes from me. I'm a Web 2 guy, right? So, and we have just a massive amount of work going on with customers. And so it's very energy consuming, and crypto is very lively and has a lot of events. So it's tough to keep up with it all. But we are making a concerted effort to show up at more of the crypto events and be more present on the Web3 side, so that we can help evangelize DePIN and show people that this is an incredibly sustainable, utility providing use case of blockchain technology and tokens. And I think it should become an unstoppable force to really improve society. I mean, infrastructure is a big unlock for everybody. It creates social mobility. It creates economic returns. I mean, infrastructure really, really helps. And DePIN is a way to build out infrastructure at global scale and so efficiently compared to the centralized way.
Well, and I think that once you are talking about more customers and people see that revenue coming in, that penny is going to drop, not just for GeoDNet, but for a lot of other projects out there. And I think this sector is going to move. I think it's so new. People haven't really understood it broadly, but I personally think DePIN can lead the next generation of users and interest in this whole space. 100%.
100% agree.
Terrific. Listen, thank you for being on. Look forward to seeing you in person again soon. And appreciate you being on. Thanks a lot, Mike.
Yeah, thanks, Tom, for having me, and look forward to seeing you at Token 24/9.
Likewise.